So political parties are really, I think in your book they talk about the oil in the gears of democracy. The point of political parties is to bring various people together to decide by majority what policies would be best for the state. Parties are designed to reduce fragmentation of society. So imagine society is filled with all these tiny puzzle pieces. What you're doing is you're aggregating these pieces, making them bigger puzzle pieces. But you're also ensuring some diversity of views. It's not just one piece. We're talking about political parties, not a single party. Okay, not a single party regime, as we talked about in the previous class. And so not all in one party are the same. You have dissent, you have people willing to leave to go to other parties. So you can't have a tyranny of the majority within these parties. Okay? Parties are designed to enhance accountability mechanisms of individuals by clearly outlining goals and missions of those parties and hence of individuals within those parties. And also to encourage competition, which should increase effectiveness. The problem is that parties can also reduce personal accountability to a certain degree, especially in PR systems where voters elect parties rather than individuals. So people can hide behind their party. They can say, hey, I wanted to do this, but the party wouldn't let me. Okay, so I didn't fail you, the party failed you. Okay, so it reduces personal accountability. Parties can also turn into large machines designed solely to win elections and thus become focused heavily on politics rather than policy making. And this is problematic. The Chicago situation in the early 1900s is a classic case of this, in the mid-1900s. Okay. So in democracies, we talk about separation of powers because too much power is bad. So we give branches, various branches, the ability to check other branches. And this can help to avert catastrophe by slowing down the policy process. A law might run its course through the courts, preventing dictatorship. A president has to have legislative approval for certain things. Can't just rule by decree. Although we'll talk about various aspects of this when we get to the states. But the idea, for example, in the United States, which was the first to formalize the separation of powers in a written constitution, is that government functions best when its powers are not concentrated in a single authority, but are instead divided among different branches. So the first three articles of the Constitution in the United States define the powers given to the three branches. Article 1 defining Congress, Article 2 defining powers of the executive branch, and Article 3, the judiciary. They're not just separated, they're also blended powers. So each serves as a check and a balance on the power of the others. So the executive can veto legislation passed by Congress. There's overlap. The judiciary can review the constitutionality of legislation if it's challenged in the court. Sorry. Oh, hold on. It's coming back. It's coming. Just a second. You get to see all the sides. Just a quick review. Yeah, you got that? Got that? Good. I did it again. Hold on. I'm about to tell you something you probably already know, but I need to go through it just formally anyway. In terms of the various bodies here, the legislative branch has the power to make the law. This is where it all plays out, the making of laws. It can be bicameral, a two-house system like we have in the United States, or it can be unicameral, just one body, so one house for the legislative branch. Bicameralism can allow for different forms of representation. For example, one can represent regions rather than smaller districts. Can counterbalance other forms of representation, like in the House, the number of seats depends on the population, but in the Senate, it's standard. You get 2 seats for every state. Bicameralism also slows down legislation, which can be good. More thought can be given, other interests can be heard, or it can be bad. It's harder to get things done, which is why upper houses are often, not in our system, but they're often weaker. And you'll find this. Usually in parliamentary systems, the lower house will be the stronger house. This is important. The executive branch it has the power to enforce the law. It implements the laws of states, including it includes the head of state, who is the formal representative of the country, and the head of government, who deals with everyday business. So you need to understand the difference between the head of state and the head of government. Again, the head of state is more ceremonial. The head of government is the one who actually takes care of these systems. In a presidential system, it's usually the same person. In a parliamentary system, we're talking about different individuals. So in a parliamentary system, the prime minister will be the head of government. in most systems, and the president or king or queen or whoever it might be will be the head of state, much more ceremonial role. In a semi-presidential system, which is fairly rare, but we have it, for example, in France, Russia, South Korea, Taiwan, the president has certain powers, like to call a referendum and to dismiss the prime minister and the legislature under certain circumstances, but there is a prime minister who's also responsible for running the state. And these semi-presidential systems play out differently. So we'll talk about those in the context of Russia and France when we get to the cases. Finally, you've got the judiciary branch. The judicial branch has the power to interpret the law. Constitutional courts are the highest judicial body. They rule on the constitutionality of government laws and actions. There are usually long terms, so you're put into a constitutional court for a very long time to avoid political influence, to make these isolated to a certain extent from politics. They operate based on judicial review, that you can review policies and overturn them if they're unconstitutional. This includes two types that you need to be familiar with. Concrete review, based only on disputes brought before this constitutional court, like our Supreme Court. And abstract review, where the court can decide on what it wants, even legislation in the making. It can pick out what it wants to challenge. Now, outside of the government, there's another check, known as civil society. The various public groups that enhance pluralism, and indirectly, by lending support to parties, or suggesting or informing legislative initiatives, influence policy. They can also influence politics and policy directly by protesting and initiating referenda, etc. So these include voluntary organizations and associations like the NRA, the ACLU, but also things like the UMBC Accounting Club, the Madison Bowling Club, business organizations. Okay? The idea here is to get people together and have them talk about politics. Not explicitly, but everything that you talk about essentially flows into politics. Not everything. But for example, the bowling club gets together in Madison, a lot of snow, and they start complaining about how it was hard to get there because the snowplows didn't get this guy's street or that girl's street. And so at the end of the day, they're saying, well, hey, how come the snowplows didn't do that? Well, we should, it's the mayor's fault. Oh yeah, this mayor's no good, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it becomes a question of accountability. So that's the idea here. And so with that, we are officially done with this section on democracy.